of IGN. Downfall of IGN.
First up is Sonic Mania, a new 2D platformer with the core classic Sonic gameplay. PS4, Xbox One, and PC spring of next year, and it is reimagined areas from Sonic's 1, 2, 3, CD. Reimagined.
Yeah, it's only going to be like you're going through Green Hill Zone from Sonic 2.
Not too long ago, there was Sonic the Hedgehog 4.
Yeah.
It was released episodically.
It had 2 episodes.
Yeah, and I think it was pretty mediocre.
Yeah, right. Sonic mediocre.
Sonic 4 is short, but sweet, and well worth downloading.
Okay. I think we're at the
Real
point
talk.
where we need to admit that this was never really a great franchise.
Nope.
And that we keep trying to find this thing that was never really actually there.
Sonic was never good. Sonic was never good.
Sonic was never good.
Oh, it was never good, huh? There was a lot of great Sonics, man.
Years ago, while talking about Sonic on Game Scoop, Brian, you had this to say.
Real point where we need to admit that this was never really a great franchise. Nope. We keep trying to find this thing that was never really actually there.
Wow. It was never really a good franchise, huh, Brian? Well, I'm sorry. We're well over, believe it or not, 100 Sonic games, 2 movies, a long-running
These dudes at
series, and
IGN
6 shows.
is
When you
entitled like a
besmirch
mug, man.
Sonic, you besmirch everyone associated with Sonic, okay, Brian? I'm just going to say that right now. Brian, I want to present you with this.
Inscrutable folk, but in many ways, we should be thanking them, because every now and then they
IGN,
review a
bunch
game
of
so
ponies,
poorly
straight
that
up
it causes us gamers, who are usually fighting amongst ourselves, to call a brief truce, congregate around the dislike button, and fight back against the common enemy. And with IGN being the poster child for bad video game journalism, I thought I'd create this list of the top 10 most disliked IGN reviews of all time. Because what brings gamers together more than pure, unbridled hate?
I wonder what number 10 is.
So, coming in at number 10, we have their review of Call of Duty Black Ops 3 from 2015, sitting at a respectable 19,000 dislikes. Why? Well, IGN once again gave a Call of Duty game a stupidly high score of 9.2 out of 10, with 0 cons. If it has no cons, why not give it a 10 then? See, not only do we get angry when IGN rate a game too low, we get just as angry when they rate a game too high, especially when that game is from a franchise like Call of Duty, which releases the same boring game year after year.
I disagree.
And IGN keeps giving them 9s out of 10s. And what really pisses on our chips is when they rate games that are clearly more innovative, original, with better mechanics, graphics and gameplay, lower than the latest Call of Duty game. So keep this score in mind as we move on down the list. At
I
number
like Call
9,
of Duty.
we have their Sonic Unleashed review from 2008.
I love Sonic
with
Unleashed.
20,000 dislikes. The reviewer basically tears the game to shreds.
There's one thing you should know about Sonic Unleashed before spending your hard-earned money on it. It's a big piece of garbage. Big piece of garbage. Indeed, it's games like this that make reviewers rethink their lives.
Don't believe
Now,
this,
I have a
guys.
theory
Sonic
when it
Unleashed
comes
is
to
a
Sonic
dope Sonic game.
Someone at Sega hates the Hedgehog with all his might, and he's going about trying to sabotage the franchise with these awful games.
Yet he still ends up somehow giving the game a 4.5. He claims the jump button is unresponsive.
4.5 out
then
of
proceeds
10?
to
What?
jump over the boost ramp to his death.
The jump button can be fatally unresponsive at times, and it's just a lot of
The
trial
jump
and error
button can be
gameplay that
fatally
can get a little bit
unresponsive.
repetitive
Why did
after
you
a
jump
while.
right there?
And
You
his
should have
hot
kept
take
this
on why you
going.
shouldn't have to upgrade Sonic's speed is so fresh.
I mean, really, do I need to pay to upgrade Sonic's speed? Shouldn't Sonic be as fast as he can be from the get-go? Isn't that the reason why I bought a Sonic game in the first place? Oh, and you can
This
cleanse
dude is
people's
a
souls
Sonic
by taking
hater.
pictures of them. I'm not even joking about that.
In the world of video games, why would taking a picture to cleanse someone's soul be so far-fetched? I mean, he knows he's playing a game in which he's controlling an anthropomorphic werewolf hedgehog, doesn't he? But at the end of the day, by 2008 standards, Sonic Unleashed wasn't that bad. and gamers were just annoyed at another IGN reviewer haphazardly reviewing a game they clearly had no interest in.
Right. Why do you keep giving the guys the games that they don't got no interest in?
Sitting at a cozy 21,000 dislikes, their 2016 review of Uncharted 4 is at number 8. So, what were we angry about this time?
Though it's let down by a lack of imagination and some self-indulgence, especially in a third act that drags on far too long.
A 9 out of 10. The dreaded, bloated third act. You know a game's going to be good when IGN give it a 9 out of 10, and we still come after them with pitchforks. Oh, I love us. But IGN have to meet us halfway.
Yeah,
they can't
dope.
give Black Ops 3 a 9.2 no cons and Uncharted 4 a 9, calling its third act bloated and saying it has a curious
Uncharted 4
lack
was
of
dope.
imagination when the entirety of Black Ops 3 is a bloated third act. Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition slashes its way into our number 7 slot with 24,000 dislikes. Now, this review has all the hallmarks of a classic bad IGN review. Firstly, the review contains a massive spoiler where they show, without warning, a late game unlockable character in the menu screen which would spoil the whole first half of the game. Now, you'd think IGN would take the video down, edit out the spoiler, and re-upload it. But instead, they decided to leave this pinned comment in the comment section. Lazy bastards. Next, the reviewer goes on to call Melia,
one of the weaker characters from the main campaign,
a sentiment Xenoblade fans strongly disagree with, and then calls the character Dunban Duncan. This time, however, they did edit out the mistake. But even in the re-edit, he still pronounces the name wrong, with a horrendous drop in audio quality, which sounds like he did the voice edits on one of these.
RPG, as the story goes, to some really, really weird places that are as
IGN
confusing
been
as
messing
they
up
are
for a long
preposterous.
time, man,
The
for
core
years.
Xenoblade experience remains intact here, lovable meathead Ryan, or the stoic and inscrutable Dunban,
They call Xenoblade Chronicles Definitive Edition
the best version of Xenoblade Chronicles we've ever had.
giving it an 8 out of 10, which is a lower score than they gave the original release and 3DS port. Work that one out.
Bad review after bad review.
In at number 6 is their Shin Megami Tensei 5 review with 36,000 dislikes, and IGN managed to piss everyone off within the first 6 seconds of the review.
Shin Megami Tensei 5 feels like the edgier, less sociable younger brother of Persona 5.
The reviewer complains about how certain aspects of the game are not the same as a Persona game, which to Shin Megami Tensei fans is the entire point. It's not so much a standalone review as Shin Megami Tensei 5, but more a video comparing 2 different series and taking marks off of one game because it's not like the other.
Where SMT5 consistently fell short for me as a massive Persona fan, though, was the writing. It takes upwards of 20 hours to find any
I bet you
personal
Happy Council
motivation
Gamer
beyond
think different.
survival and figuring out what's going on.
That's one of his
in
favorite
contrast to
games.
Persona 5, which makes things personal.
I told you,
right
IGN
away.
been messing up
I
for a
just
long,
couldn't shake
long
the feeling
time,
that This
man.
was Persona without the heart. Without the unforgettable companion characters, the potent personal story, the incredible soundtrack, and the jaw-dropping twists and turns.
Giving the game an 8, with the only negatives being that it's not like Persona, is mental, and fans of the Shin Megami Tensei series were absolutely right to call this one out.
Right.
Things are hotting up now. Doom 2016 blasts its way in at number 5 with a healthy 42,000 dislikes. He starts waffling on about how Doom 2016 feels too Doom.
For some, this is exactly what Doom should be, because it resembles the 1993 game of the same name. But with all due respect, those are desperately low expectations. But it doesn't really distinguish itself by recreating 25-year-old gameplay.
Man, Doom
2
16
minutes
is
and
dope.
15 seconds is all the time he gives to reviewing Doom's main campaign before moving on to the multiplayer, which he also hates.
Fixed power-up placement and shortcuts give experienced players who know the map an advantage.
No. Really? Do you mean to tell me that if players learn the maps and best weapon locations, they have an advantage?
This makes the decision to restrict access to weapons and include a Call of Duty style leveling system that much stranger, because it gives experienced players another leg up with access to better weapons and more powerful demon
Oh yeah, he was getting his butt kicked. That's why he don't like
put
it.
more time and effort into the multiplayer get access to better weapons and items.
I'm telling
You're
you,
blowing
man.
my
They
mind,
need to
IGN.
fire all
my mind.
of the
So what was
reviewers,
the
man, and
on
get
one of
new
the best
ones in there.
shooters to have come out in the last 15 years? A 7.1
What?
out of 10.
It still meets the high bar Call of Duty fans expect.
We should have got a little higher than that.
Amazingly, we have a tie at our number 4 spot between two different Pokemon game reviews. Pokemon Alpha Sapphire Omega Ruby and Pokemon Sword and Shield, both on 45,000 dislikes. And believe it or not, Sapphire Ruby is probably the most infamous review on this list because it gave birth to the most popular IGN meme, too much water.
It's not a new complaint, but the Hoenn region is still imbalanced type-wise, heavily favoring water Pokemon. It's especially noticeable in Alpha Sapphire since the villainous Team Aqua uses a lot of water types. It just feels like there are water Pokemon in nearly every battle, and I have an overleveled Pikachu to show for it. You also have to navigate many bodies of water, which makes much of the late game incredibly tedious.
Other than saying the game is too much water and too many hidden moves, she doesn't seem to have anything else negative to say about the remaster. And I guess Pokemon fans, as understanding and compassionate as they may be, were just perplexed as to why having too much water would have such a heavy effect on the overall rating of the game, which the reviewer gives a 7.8.
Wow, she said too
so
much
politely
water.
Picking up their pitchforks, they completely annihilated the review and created a meme so powerful it now completely
Too much
embodies the entire
water. Too
bad
many
video
hidden
game
moves.
journalism topic.
That is
right,
stupid.
onto Sword and Shield.
Same nostalgic charm, but it doesn't fall victim to getting stuck in the past. It streamlines and fixes many of the series' long-running problems, from excessive tutorials to the tedium of navigating random encounters. Simply put, Sword and Shield are the best Pokemon games I have ever played, and I've played them all.
Big words from IGN there. It seems that some people like this game and some people think it's an absolute underwhelming letdown. But it's no question that everyone was expecting the second Pokemon game on a home console to look much better than it did, and include all pre-existing Pokemon, which it didn't, causing the whole Game Freak Lied controversy. When they said the reason why they're not including all pre-existing Pokemon was because they were remaking character models and their animations, not just porting them over from older games. Then a Reddit post surfaced showing allegedly leaked data-mined comparisons of Sword and Shield's character models alongside character models from older games that seemed to completely contradict what Game Freak had previously said, aka Game Freak Lied.
IGN just
so
run with
I think we're
the
not
narrative.
just seeing people disagreeing
They
with
just-
IGN's stupidly high score for another
Wow.
Pokemon game, but also
That
protest
Pokemon game,
dislikes
there's no
of
way
the
it could be
feeling they had been
it's
lied to
higher than
by the
Call of Duty.
developers, and IGN hilariously getting caught in the crossfire. Gotta love it.
Wow, it's higher than Call of Duty, man.
Cruising its way into our number 3 slot is their review of Days Gone from 2019 with 50,000 dislikes. What did IGN do now? Well, first off, this is the same reviewer that gave Uncharted 4 with its bloated third act a 9. So she was already on the Sony fanboys' naughty dog list. And boy howdy, she pulled no punches here, giving Days Gone a 6.5. Calling it bloated as well?
Days Gone ultimately feels bloated, like a movie that goes on for an hour longer than it needs to or should have. There's definitely a good game in here somewhere. You can feel it in the crunchy combat and when running from an enormous freaker horde. Some fine-tuning and editing could have removed the tedium and highlighted what makes this game unique and interesting, but Days Gone rides strictly down the middle of the dusty road and never finds its rhythm.
Now, the general consensus is that the game is pretty good, and I think gamers felt the 6.5 was unjustified and found some of the reviewers' criticisms disingenuous. Like here, for instance, when she criticises the bad writing.
Which Days Gone insists on telling largely through tedious, barely interactive flashbacks of him and his wife. The dialogue's pretty bad.
But only if you promise to ride me as much as you ride your bike.
On the face of it, you'd think the reviewer has a point. Out of context, that line does seem really cringy. But earlier on in the game, Deacon's wife Sarah specifically asked Deacon not to say that line at their wedding, only to surprise him by saying it herself. The reviewer also hits us with this absolute peach.
Deacon can also unlock a slow-mo ability early on, which makes no sense for a biker, but it allows you to relieve the pressure for a moment if you get overwhelmed.
It's a game with guns. What on earth is she blathering about? Why should riding a bike stop us from having a slow motion ability in our zombie shooting game?
Because Days Gone's missions suffer from repetition across the board.
Oh, what's that, IGN? You don't like repetitive missions? Then why did you give the 888th Assassin's Creed game a 9.2 only 6 months earlier? Another inconsistent IGN review, coupled with pissing off every Sony fanboy again, is why this review took the number 3 slot.
Fail after fail after fail.
Unbelievably, at number 2, we have a 3-way tie. Alien Isolation, Death Stranding, and SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated reviews all managed to achieve 51,000
I ain't gonna lie, I didn't like the first
dislikes
Death
each,
Stranding.
and all 3 games couldn't be more different from one another, which just showcases IGN's remarkable ability to enrage gamers regardless of what types of games they review. At this point, it actually starts to become impressive. When I began researching for this video, watching one bad IGN review after the other, I looked a lot like this. But by the time I got to the end, on finding out that they'd managed to reach 51,000 dislikes on 3 separate occasions, the agony and pure frustration started to melt away, replaced by amazement and a cheerful, bubbly, light-hearted sense of childlike wonder. So, how did IGN manage to rack up 153,000 dislikes across 3 reviews? Well, a good start would be giving Alien Isolation a 5.9 out of 10.
But when the genuine scares of being hunted by an unstoppable predator
They already
are
known
so
to
diluted by
they
repetition
always
and
judge
padding,
Sega games
Isolation's
poorly.
epic length really does work against it. Someday, someone is going to make an incredible Alien video game that checks every box. But sadly, Isolation is not it.
Needless to say, gamers were outraged, and judging by the comment section, still are, and rightly so. It's one of the most atmospheric, tense, faithful to its source material horror games ever made. Even 8 years after its release, it's still better than most, if not all, of the crappy horror shovelware games you'll come across today. And it didn't help that IGN gave Goat Simulator an 8 out of 10 6 months earlier. One of the most laughable criticisms the reviewer makes is how he was killed, even though he was motionless and out of sight.
Fright dissolved into frustration as I got killed from behind for the umpteenth time, even as I was crouched motionless and out of sight in an air duct.
But leaves out the fact that he was holding the motion sensor that alerts aliens to your position, which the game makes perfectly clear, and it's just another case of IGN getting the completely wrong person for the job. A mistake they also made with their review of Death Stranding, which they gave a 6.8.
Certain landmark games in recent years, like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild and Red Dead Redemption 2, have managed to successfully tread the line between the rigidity of realism and the exhilaration of pure escapism. Death Stranding possesses similarly lofty ambitions, inventive ideas, and a sprawling, spectacular map, but it's all been saddled on a backbone made of repetitive mission design and arduous traversal that simply can't support its weight over the full course of the journey.
This review apparently isn't for everyone.
Perfectly balanced.
Just as the game isn't for everyone. And it's definitely a game you have to be in the right mood and frame of mind to play, which if you are, there's no doubt you'll find the 6.8 score absolutely ridiculous, and even if the game's not for you, I'm sure you'd still be able to appreciate that Death Stranding is a truly unique AAA one-off experience from one of gaming's living legends, Hideo Kojima. And lest we forget, in the very same month, in the very same year, they gave Pokemon Sword and Shield a 9.3 out of 10. Okay, last game in this 3-way tie. SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. How is it even possible to get 51,000 dislikes on your review of a remake of a 17-year-old mediocre SpongeBob SquarePants platformer that PS2 kids remember fondly? Well, from what I can tell, his main problem with the game is that it feels like a remake of a 17-year-old mediocre SpongeBob SquarePants platformer that PS2 kids remember fondly, and that it doesn't feel as good as the Crash and Spyro remakes.
It's accompanied by some imaginative improvements, but those few bright spots aren't enough to bring Battle for Bikini Bottom's passable but simplistic gameplay up to the standard of a 2020 platformer, let alone impressive recent remakes like the Spyro Reignited trilogy. All three playable characters, SpongeBob, Sandy, and Patrick, have the same repetitive few lines of dialogue that they bleed out after finding collectibles, grabbing health, or hitting enemies.
I feel like a new sponge. Oh, sparkly. I love opening presents.
By the 30th time I heard them, I just wanted to stop playing.
He then goes on to call the remake of a 17-year-old mediocre SpongeBob SquarePants platformer that PS2 kids remember fondly, get this, too kid-friendly.
Battle for Bikini Bottom is an incredibly easy platformer with only a few truly challenging sections thrown in. The difficulty jump in levels like SpongeBob's Dream is often fun, but there's such whiplash from the rest of the adventure. And when they're done, the challenge reverts to being simplistic and kid-friendly for its final few challenges.
Ultimately, us gamers are always happy when a game from our childhood gets a good remake, which is what Rehydrated is. Okay, it doesn't add any bells and whistles, but what did the reviewer expect them to do with Battle for Bikini Bottom? Add a Battle Royale mode? And the gamers that enjoyed this game as kids, who probably just wanted to take a load off and rekindle their youth for a few hours, didn't appreciate another disinterested, monotone IGN review raining on their parade.
They gave it a 5.
It's the big one. The Last of Us Part 2 is the
I didn't
most
like the story
disliked
in this.
IGN review of all time, coming in at nearly double that of our number 2 games.
The story was terrible.
91,000 dislikes. Spoiler alert, covering the build-up and leaks and the controversy around this game is another video entirely, but let me just cover the main kick in the balls. The first game is one of the most loved and critically acclaimed games of all
it
time,
was dope.
no question. Not just for its graphics and gameplay, but for its storytelling, dialogue, and the relationship that develops between the two main characters, Joel and Ellie. And as the credits rolled on the first game, the 7-year-long wait for the sequel began. Then about a month prior to The Last of Us 2's release came the leaks, with one leak towering above the rest. The leak was a cutscene of Joel, the main character from The Last of Us, getting his head caved in by an athletic woman with a golf club. Needless to say, fans of the series were stunned. Not only did they have to deal with the main character of their favourite game getting killed off, but they then had to continue playing the game as the random chick that killed him. And so when IGN said this...
But while Part 2 is a thrilling adventure, it still makes time
Wow.
for a stunning, nuanced
They gave-
exploration of the
they
strength
gave it a
and
10?
fragility of the human spirit. The
That game is
PlayStation
not a
4 has
10.
one of its finest exclusives in one of the generation's best games.
Personally, I only liked the first game.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
was
it
gonna say
brilliant,
part
don't
1
get
was
me
better
wrong.
than part 2.
No need to dislike this video. Wouldn't that be ironic? But once I finished it, I didn't feel the need to ever play it again. We're not talking about beautiful Joe here, let's be real. And whether or not The Last of Us Part 2 deserves to be the main focus of the most disliked IGN review of all time is up for debate. But what's not up for debate is that IGN continue to be the worst source of video game reviews on the internet.
Yes.
And long may they reign.
Yes.
Thank you all for watching. I've been the Tominator. Subscribe if you want to see more gaming content like this, and let me know what IGN review pissed you off the most in the comments. For me, it's Greg Miller's review of Zombie U.
But for now, Zombie U is a one-dimensional whack-a-mole title with some clever ideas that never really come together.
This, I guess it's playable. Starfield, 93%. That's really good, man. Before anyone brings up the IGN review, IGN USA, 7 out of 10. IGN Japan, Spain, Brazil. So what the
IGN, fail after
Here's the
fail.
biggest fundamental problem. See this vast map of stars?
It feels extremely small, when each of its hundreds of explorable planets is separated by little more than a loading screen. It didn't take long for me to realize that takeoff and landing animations are barely interactive cutscenes. They can often be bypassed by just going to the map screen and jumping to another planet without even setting foot on a ship.
I'm going to play this and I'm going to see for myself, because the people that write articles about video games are oftentimes the least qualified to talk about video games. Here's my advice. Watch a stream. Any of these people are all streaming Starfield, right? So just go watch them play the game, and if it looks like shit, then don't buy it. I mean, really, it's not that hard, right?
See what I'm saying, man? IGN, they just keep having fail after fail, man. They fail every time. Fail after fail. I stopped liking them when I heard them say so many bad things about Sega in the past. So I've been stopped watching them, man. But I can't see that people can trust any of their reviews. Any of their reviews. You know? And for those that don't know, you know, there's a guy named Destin that's on YouTube that does IGN reviews and stuff, and he act like he be trying to straddle the fence and tries to stay in the middle of the fence, but you can clearly see by some of the things that he do, he's on their side. He agreed, you know, in IGN, it ain't nothing but a bunch of yes men and yes women that's around IGN, man. And for them to give so many bad reviews, I can't see how they stood this long, man. I just don't see how they stood this long, man. But, you know, I had to bring y'all the video, you know, because IGN is full of crap. And, you know, really social media is tired of it, you know. You know, it's the small YouTubers like myself that's tired of all these game companies sending these reviews, free reviews and stuff to companies that don't deserve them, to social media sites that do not deserve them. IGN don't deserve a review from pretty much anybody right now. And that's my take on it, man. Thank y'all for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, y'all too old to be playing video games.